Hello and welcome to my channel, In Search of Wonder. This is my weekly Wonderings and Wanderings. Today, like last weekend, I am once again wandering off with my sisters. They get me in all kinds of trouble. Today we are going to a coffee and chocolate festival, which I have talked about before. If you've followed me for any length of time, you may have remembered me mentioning it before. It happens once or twice a year, and it's a huge deal. It's really crowded. It's very crowded. But I have had, oh, there's a beautiful blue jay. Oh man, I wish I could, but I can't. I wish I could switch my camera from front to back, but I can't, so I wish I could show you. Anyways, the Coffee and Chocolate Festival, yeah, it's a big deal, and you get to taste samples of coffee from all sorts of local roasters and coffee purveyors, and there's also chocolate there. And I have definitely discovered some new favorite local coffee sources, and it's just fun, and can buy a few Christmas gifts along the way since I know a lot of coffee loving people, and I'm just really looking forward to it. It's gonna be a great day. After that, there is a library book sale that I'm going to go to, and yeah, that's gonna be my fun day. Then I gotta go home and clean the house. Anyways, so that is my fun morning, but first I'm gonna stop off at the post office and drop off a package. Thank you so much to all of you who ordered the journal, the printed one, or the one to print online, or ordered other things from my Etsy shop. I just really appreciate your support of me and my channel. I hope that you find the journals useful and helpful in the coming year, and fun to fill out and to keep track of your books as you read them. And I also hope that you really enjoy the other things that you purchase at my shop, and that it's exactly what you want and are looking for, and it is worthwhile to you. And anyways, I just really appreciate all of you for supporting me. All right, so off I go on my fun little wanderings and wanderings today. The same day, Saturday, but I am home now from all of my wandering, and I had a fantastic time at the coffee festival with my sisters, and I spent way too much money, especially since I went to this one. Well, first, our strategy was, at least my one sister and I, our strategy was to go to all of the booths, sample all the coffee that we were interested in, and choose our favorite before we bought anything. And so I definitely had my favorite coffee, which was a Hawaiian coffee at one of the coffee roasters, which is a fairly local one that I'd never heard of before. Apparently, they sell at a farmer's market, not one that I go to on a regular basis, but not that far from me. Anyway, so they had a Hawaiian coffee that was really good, like so good, smooth and rich and no acidity, like not any noticeable acidity, which I don't like high acidity in coffee that you can taste, like sometimes people call it like a fruity or sometimes floral notes. Like I don't really like those. Anyway, so I really loved that coffee. It was so good. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go back and get it. I kind of briefly glanced at the price list and I heard her tell someone that it was their premium coffee. And so the highest price that I saw on the list was $20. So anyway, I asked for the Hawaiian coffee and, I figured $20 was perfectly reasonable for that, for the time and whatever. And as I was tapping my card to pay, I saw the price on the screen. It was, I'm ashamed to say it, I can't believe I paid this much for coffee. It was $47. And my husband was like, I would have just been like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize it was that much. And I was like, yeah, I should have done that, but I was too embarrassed. So I just paid it. And yeah, so I'm never doing that again. I've never done it before. I'm never doing it again. That's way too much money for coffee. So I'm going to savor every single cup and enjoy it thoroughly. Gonna get my $47 worth out of that bag of coffee. Anyway, other than that, I had a marvelous time. I even got some coffee kombucha, cold brew kombucha. What? It's a thing. After that, I went to a library sale, which this was a smaller library, and so the library sale was smaller. There were a lot of books that actually interested me, but they were not books that I had on my TBR or were anywhere on my radar, and it's kind of like my rule of thumb to be very sparing about picking those sorts of books up because I don't have space for them. So I left a lot of books there that did kind of interest me, and as I was there, they were announcing that it was the last hour of the sale, and so they were doing a fill a bag for $5. But I was like, I don't want to bring a bag full of books home and not have a place to put them. So I'm not going to bother with that. I just had two books that I was interested in. And so one was The Magdalene Girls, which when I read the book Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan, who is an Irish author, and her book is about the Magdalena laundries in Ireland, which I did not know anything about, but found the history in that book about them so fascinating and interesting. And so this is about those same things, the Magdalene Girls. Basically, this is girls who find themselves pregnant out of wedlock, and so the Magdalene laundries are supposed to be a place to give them a career and a livelihood and a place to live and take care of their child. But they ended up often becoming something much more sinister than that. And so I feel like this is really going to be a very interesting book. It's published by Kensington. So this just really intrigued me. I don't know much about this book or this author. I feel like I've heard this title before. I don't know that I've heard of the author, V.S. Alexander, but I'm very interested in reading that. And then there was this book, Keto cookbook, which I don't eat strictly keto because it tends to mess with my hormones a little bit. But I find that if I can stick to 70-ish grams of carbs a day, that seems to be the optimum level of carbs that my system needs, but it's not too much. That's what I kind of aim for. So that means that I do eat some like keto, because you have to have a balance of like things that don't have a lot of carbs in them. Especially because if you have like pasta that like blows it, you know, or certain types of bread and certain other things. Anyway, so it's good to have some keto recipes to eat like some low carb things. And so this is, has all kinds of information about it and everything. And Maria Emmerich she is like the OG, if I remember correctly. She's like the OG of keto stuff, like, or like her website, her keto website. It has been around for a long time, and it's one that I've come across a lot in search for recipes. And she has pioneered quite a few recipes and types of recipes in the keto realm. So anyway, picked up this book. The funny thing was, when I got to the table to pay for it, the lady was like, how about $6? And I was like, where is she getting that from? Because it was $3 for hardcover, $2 for large paperbacks, and $1 for small paperbacks. And I mean, this is definitely a large paperback. This, you know, sure, large, because it's not like a trade or a mass market paperback. So I was thinking $4 total, especially since they were having the $5 fill-a-bag sale at the moment, and she was gonna have me pay $6 for just 2 books. And I was like, but thankfully the other lady who was there was like, well, these are both paperback though. And so the lady was like, yeah, but they're large. And then she was like she was being nice to me. She was like, well, how about 5 then? And I was like, well, but it says $2 for large paperbacks. And she's like, oh, okay, well, how about 4? And I'm like, yeah, 4 sounds good, because that's the price that you have listed. Sounds like a really good price to me. Anyway, so $4 for these 2. And then there was one of my favorite thrift stores nearby. And I'm sitting next to the piano, and I just, you know, played a little with my elbow. I normally find a lot of books there that I at least want, even if I don't actually buy them. I normally find a lot of books in great condition for cheap, but I guess somebody had cleaned them out recently because they didn't have much. But I did find this lovely little copy of Christmas with Hans Christian Andersen for only 50 cents. And okay, so these look like feathers, right? They're matches. They're made out of matches. And you know why? Because the Little Match Girl is a story in here. And you know something? I don't know why, but the Little Match Girl story by Hans Christian Andersen is one of my all-time favorites since I was a little girl. I don't know why I loved such a tragic story from such a young age, but I did. And I still love that story, and it still makes me cry. So I love that story. I love this cover, how they made it look Christmassy, but this like made with matches. And it actually has 4 stories by Hans Christian Andersen in it. The Fir Tree, The Snowman, The Little Match Girl, The Last Dream of the Old Oak. And of those, I've probably read The Fir Tree. That sounds familiar. Don't think I've read The Snowman or The Last Dream of the Old Oak. So I can read these this Christmas time. So that is my adventures for today. And I'll be popping in later this week and giving updates on what I will be reading. I'm almost done with Areopagitica by John Milton, and then I need to read his essay Of Education. And that one is shorter, significantly shorter. So hopefully it will just take me over the next couple of days to finish that up. And then still reading Northanger Abbey and still reading Shirley. When I finish with Areopagitica, I am going to pick up something fun, like maybe just a Christmas book, or maybe the book that I have lined up for Jane Reed's Christian Fiction Challenge. I forget the title of it, but it's by a local author that I want to read. So I can't decide which of those, or I might pick up, anyways, any number of things. But those are what I'm thinking of. But first I have to finish the John Milton. I'm not expecting to finish either Northanger Abbey or Shirley this week. I'm about halfway through Shirley and about 30% of the way through Northanger Abbey. And I am going to be pretty busy this week. So we have an early release on Friday, but I've also got a lot going on. So I am doing this coming Saturday, I'm going to be doing my live craft show, I guess, local here. And so right now I'm going to go and try to set up a sample table to see how I want to get it to look for the show. So I'm gonna go do that now. Although it occurs to me, I think I might need some boxes from the shed that have Christmas stuff in them. But anyways, I'll do what I can do with what I have inside right now and see what I can come up with. So that's what I've got going on right now, and I will check in later with more reading updates. Hello friends, it is Tuesday evening and I am working on dinner. I'm going to make some chicken fried rice in the Instant Pot, and I am peeling carrots at the moment. So if you hear a scraping sound, there's going to be a chopping sound here in a few minutes. Anyway, I finished Areopagitica and all of the other bits in that book by John Milton a couple of days ago, but this is my first chance I've had to record my thoughts about that. And the truth is, I don't want to say too much, honestly. I know famous last words. Don't believe me when I say that, but really that's the truth, that's my intention, because I have so many different thoughts about John Milton's essay on not really free speech, more like freedom of the press was really the gist of it. He was talking about, he was speaking out against a licensing program that Parliament had started. Hold that thought. A licensing program that England had just started, Parliament had just put into law, that required anything that was being printed to be licensed to print first. So like you had to get permission to print it. And which is a foreign concept to us, right? Because as, you know, Americans in our Bill of Rights, you know, we have the freedom of the press. And I don't fully understand the context, and I didn't fully research the context either, outside of the information that was contained in the book and within his speech. But it did seem like he was speaking out particularly in terms of religious publications. And so I'm not really sure if it was only in regards to religious materials or if it was in regards for everything, because his arguments were pretty well confined to that. So really, in essence, it's a freedom of religion aspect as well. The need to be able to freely discuss and debate religious topics, and within the context of Christianity, mind you, also is important to note. So his arguments were limited, and at the same time, broadly applicable to a wide variety of issues. But he was definitely very focused on one aspect of freedom of the press in his speech. So that was interesting. Also, the other primary work that was included in this book was Of Education, which was a response to someone who had asked him for, basically it was kind of like, if you could build a dream school from scratch, what would it look like and what would the curriculum be? Essentially was what it was. And so he started with the building And then, you know, didn't spend real long on that, but they went on to talk about how he would educate young men from ages 12 to 21. And it was a very ambitious education, classical, of course. And one thing that I thought was amusing, so apparently John Milton himself was very gifted in languages. So that shows up in his ideal curriculum because he was like, you know, 1 year is enough for students to learn Latin easily and joyfully, and you know, then they don't need to spend any more time like they'll know it like in a year. So a year to master Latin, okay, and you know, then to master it, to be able to read in Latin, like, and then he was like, and then they can learn Greek, and then they can learn Spanish and Italian, which makes, I think those were the languages he said, which kind of makes sense because those are very closely affiliated to Latin. Spanish and Italian are. So that kind of makes sense. But then he goes and he's, you know, describing the course as they move up, you know, 12 to 14 years of age, and then, you know, like 15 to 17, and then up from there. And he's like, by the time they get to, let's say 17 or 18 or whatever, he's like, it will be no problem for them to learn the Syrian and Chaldean languages and Hebrew in their spare time. So, y'all slackers out there who have not learned, what is that? Latin, Greek, Hebrew, Syrian, Chaldean, 5 ancient languages. What are you doing? What are you even doing with your life? Better get busy. Come on now. You know, he was similarly ambitious in his other areas of education and curriculum, but not language was the main one that he was like, oh yeah, no problem. You can learn these languages, guys, like just real quick in your spare time. Very, very classical, but also Christian. A lot of what his perspective and his recommendations and his philosophy or whatever was very familiar to me. Being in the classical Christian world myself, the sort of things he was saying are the sort of things that we hear all the time, you know, in faculty meetings and conferences and training and the books we read, etc. So it was all very familiar ground for me, if a little bit ambitious for the modern child. I do think there is an element of I don't know how to put this, because it's like a whole other subject for another day, really, but there's a common perception that, you know, as time goes on, humans are getting smarter. I don't think that's true, because I think people even though most people weren't educated back in that time, like only the wealthy could afford that education, I do think that if everybody had been given a chance, like everybody who learned more than we learn now, even with a 4-year college degree and master's and other things. Now, are there still very intelligent people today? Yes, absolutely, 100%, who could rival those of prior eras? Yeah, for sure. But I'm just saying in general, I think, and I think some of it has to do with lifestyle, some of it has to do with philosophy and cultural framework and religious framework and morality, but I think a lot of it has to do with genes and the devolving gene pool. I think those are my thoughts for what they're worth. Then there were some other pieces in the book, shorter pieces, that were two of them I didn't even understand what they were talking about. I'm not sure why they were in the book, because the editor of the book didn't really give any context or information about what specifically he was talking about. He was responding to someone else. He was like responding to claims other people had made, but we didn't know what they were except for what he said about them in his response. And it was very, very difficult to understand what the point was. So I didn't understand why they were in the book, and they didn't make sense to me, and I didn't get a lot out of those. The last one was in a similar vein, but as part of his defense to this person who had criticized him very forcefully, he was basically giving his whole life story. And so his giving of his life story was actually kind of interesting. So I enjoyed that one more so than the others that were included. But really, the Areopagitica and Of Education ones were the primary ones that I read the book for. I wanted to be able to say I finished the book. So I read through the other selections that were there, even though there wasn't much to them. I continue to persevere through Shirley. I say persevere. It's not like it's a difficult thing to read or that I'm not enjoying it. I just am continuing to read a little bit every day and enjoying that. I am continuing to read in Northanger Abbey when I have time, which is not a lot. And I haven't picked up anything else yet. I will pick up A Love Restored, the book for the Christian Fiction Readathon that I am doing with Jane Reed's Christian Fiction. I will pick that up at some point this week, but it's a really busy week and it's a really busy weekend. So we'll see. We'll see what I actually get to read. Next week I'm off work, so that will be nice. And I'm already planning that my next Monday is going to be my relax and read day. So I'm going to do relaxing things. I'm going to do reading things. And I may have to do, some other important things in there. But by and large, I'm intending to just relax that day because the rest of the week will be filled with doing things. So those are my plans this week and going into next and what I've been reading and what I've been thinking. So I'll wrap up this clip for now, and I will see you next time. Bye. It's Friday evening, and I am here to give my final reading update for the week. So I don't have a lot to report. I've been kind of busy, but today we had an early release from school. We had a Thanksgiving feast and an early release. The Thanksgiving feast was my first of 3. We'll have another one on Sunday and then the actual one on Thanksgiving Day. So that was fun. It was a good time. I am home alone for a little bit longer. My kids had basketball practice and my husband was with them. So I'm going to take this time to wrap up this weekly vlog and share where I am in my reading. I haven't finished anything or really read significantly much more since the last time I made a clip, but I am about 2/3 of the way through Shirley by Charlotte Bronte, and I am very much enjoying it. It's definitely not on par for me with Jane Eyre. There's a reason why Jane Eyre is definitely significantly much better known of Charlotte's works. But it does have its own strengths as a story and its own appeal and substance to it. I think it's more serious and realistic than Jane Eyre is. And it's grappling with not more real things, but more tangible things, maybe. It's definitely, I feel like, let me say that. I wouldn't say that. How can I put this? Charlotte Bronte seems to be working out in this book her frustrations with being a single woman in the Victorian era and the limitations imposed on her, particularly as a woman of a certain class. So the lower classes, the working classes, they could have fulfilling lives in the sense that they could work and be productive. But even that was not without its frustrations, as is, clearly portrayed here with the trouble with the mill owners and the rise of the industrial age, all of that kind of stuff. And also it's a poverty-stricken life. So it's not an easy life. So it's not something that you would aspire to, right? And so for someone who is like in the average middle class, but the woman having limited opportunities other than marriage, she's kind of comparing it to, like, in some instances in this book, she's using strong words, like comparing it to like a kind of death, like a slow dying, because there's a lack of purpose and there's a lack of vitality. And, the women in this situation aren't healthy, aren't well, because they lack purpose. And I think it was a big problem in that era an era particularly that she's writing about because of the wars with Napoleon and all of that, had killed many men. And so there was a shortage of men, and so not as many women were getting married, but they didn't have a lot of other options besides marriage. So many of them ended up as governesses. Well, that angle is explored in this book, not heavily, but it's definitely explored and touched on as being not a desirable pursuit for most women and in most situations. And then there are other very limited opportunities, and that working for the poor, while it has its own reward and is a good and valid thing to do, again, only goes so far in terms of purpose and giving meaning to life. So Charlotte Bronte seems to be working out her own frustrations with her personal situation in this book. Thankfully, she was able to find an outlet and a purpose in her writing. And so that belies her argument a little bit, but at the same time, you know, it was definitely true for women in that time and of that class that aside from marriage, there wasn't a lot to give them purpose and meaning in life. And for someone like the character Caroline, that we spend a great deal of time with in this story, the person that she loves is, up until the point where I'm reading in this story, not available to her. He definitely loves her as a person, but has not shown specific romantic interest in her. And Caroline has no reason to believe that they will ever end up together. In fact, she's quite sure of the opposite. And so that compounds her problem, because the one person that she wants to marry is not an option for her, and she has no desire to marry anybody else. And then no other opportunities. And so she's really struggling with that reality throughout this story. So it's a huge component of this book and a huge theme in this book. It's really a deep dive into, I think, Charlotte's thoughts on that matter, and as explored through the various characters. I will say it is a little bit heavy-handed, because I feel like the characters, the female characters that she brings into the story, and she's really exploring a lot of different types of female characters and examining them, sometimes with a magnifying glass or even a microscope, and examining their motives and their interactions with other people and their character. And many women are falling short of an ideal for sure. But she's really examining the reality of female life in this era. Now Charlotte Bronte is Victorian, but this is set in the Regency time. But I think it would apply throughout that era, the whole century. Anyway, so it's very interesting. It's a little bit heavy-handed sometimes, because like I said, you know, I don't think I finished my train of thought. I think that through her examination of the lives of the women that she presents in this story, she could make her point very clearly, but she also includes it quite heavy-handedly in the dialogue as well, and sometimes in the narrative. She's speaking directly to the reader as the author, and it's a little much. Like, agenda-driven books for me are not my favorite kind of story. If she had a lighter touch with some of that, it would have been more effective, in my opinion, personally. But I'm still enjoying the story. I'm particularly enjoying the story of Caroline, and really wanting to see how her story ends up. I read it many years ago, but I can't remember. So then I am reading Northanger Abbey, and I have not had as much time to spend with this as I would like, but I'm about a little more than a third of the way through probably, and very much enjoying it. I love Catherine Morland. She's so young and naive, but I think I've said this before, but she has her own brand of smart. Like, she's no dummy, honestly. She cannot meet Henry Tilney in a match of wits. Not at all. He's very witty and quick, and she's not on that level. But she knows who she is, and she knows what's right, and she knows what's wrong, and she sticks to that. And so in that way, people can't pull the wool over her eyes. She can be tricked to an extent, to an extent, but never fully taken advantage of, because she doesn't, I don't know, it's really hard to explain, but she's a very likable young teenage girl in that she's not completely stupid, but she's believably naive for someone of her situation and circumstance. And I also am really enjoying this annotated version because some of these things I had caught before, but he really shows all of the details of the ways that Jane Austen is mimicking a Gothic novel. But basically what she's doing is she's taking everything that happens in a Gothic novel and she's turning it on its head and making it a very mundane, just normal, everyday teenage girl life experience. And when David M. Shepard in the annotations is pointing these things out, it just heightens my enjoyment of it, and it's really interesting. So if you've read, don't use the annotated version the first time you read it, but if you've read Northanger Abbey before and you enjoyed it, or you want to understand a little bit more what Jane Austen is doing here in this novel, then definitely read the annotated version, because it's giving a lot of insight into what exactly Jane Austen is doing, and it's so clever, and I'm really enjoying that. So wishing I could spend more time with it, but we'll see. Then I started A Love Restored by Kelly Goshorn, and I've not gotten very far. It is funny. There is a nice sense of humor flowing through here. It's not, I don't think it's like a rom-com or anything. I don't think it's historical, but I don't think it's like a historical rom-com really. I think, but it has some, there's a sense of humor in it, which I really enjoy. As far as I've gotten, it's just really setting up the story, and I'm not far enough in to really say one way or the other how I feel like what's going to happen in the story, or what, the situation she's setting up, whatever. So I don't have a lot to say about it. I feel like where I'm at now, I feel like it's going to end up being like 3.5 stars. Not that I hate it, but it's a good book. It's fun. I'm enjoying reading it and would recommend it. That's where I feel like it's going to end. Just not anything that's like amazing or super profound or memorable, but it might change. It might improve. Well, not that it needs to improve per se. Like it might end up being more than I think it is at the moment, but all the same, I'm really enjoying it. I really hate trying to explain that. It doesn't really make sense to me. Like books that I enjoy, but they're not like 5-star. You know what I'm saying? Doesn't make sense. Like it's not a diss against the author or even the book itself. It's just sometimes I take marks off a book because, they're genuine things that I dislike or whatever about it. But then sometimes it's just like, it's good and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't like 5-star. I don't know. Does that make sense? Is that silly? I don't even know. Whatever. So that is my final wrap up for this vlog, my final update on my reading. Tomorrow I am going to be at a craft show, and I will have a table. I will be a vendor there with my blind book dates, as well as my t-shirts and mugs from my Etsy shop. And so I am looking forward to that. I am hoping that it goes well. And then I feel, and then my husband and I are going to a opera in the evening. George Mason University, in one of their auditoriums, they frequently have like the Virginia Opera will perform there, and they will sometimes have visiting troops from around the world, around the country, whatever, with operas, ballets, etc. And it's fairly affordable as compared to going to, like the Met or something. I am really looking forward to that. We're going to see let me see if I can get my Italian tongue to work. La Cenerentola, that wasn't bad, by Rossini, otherwise known as Cinderella. It is definitely Rossini's version of Cinderella. Well, not really his version of Cinderella. It's the librettist version of Cinderella, who I don't remember right now at the moment who it is. But anyway, it's one of my favorite operas. There is a really fantastic movie version, or like it was like a TV movie version of it, like from the 80s, that's actually really good, with really good singing and pretty good acting and good casting, that I have watched several times on YouTube. But I'm really excited to see it live, and I'm hoping that I enjoy it just as much live. So Anyway, we're going to the opera tomorrow. So all of that will be on next week's reading vlog. And of course, I'm looking forward to Thanksgiving next week. And I'm also looking forward to Monday. I don't have anything on the calendar. And so for myself, I have deemed that day to be my read and relax day. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read and relax. I have cooking and baking to do on Tuesday and Wednesday. And you know, obviously Thanksgiving on Thursday and other stuff, Friday, Saturday. But anyways, Monday is going to be my day that I am just going to read and relax and not feel like I am required to do anything. So I'm really looking forward to that, because otherwise it will be a nice oasis in the middle of all the crazy busy this time of year. But you will have to wait until next Sunday to hear all about that, because right now I am signing off for this week, and I will see you next time. Please let me know in the comments your thoughts about what you are reading and what I have been reading, and my thoughts about what I'm reading, what you think about my thoughts. I don't know. Talk to me in the comments. That's what I mean. I don't know what I'm saying. Bye.